Dad's silent revenge.
The pen was shaking in my hand as I stared at the $1.2 million contract spread across the mahogany table at Belmont's restaurant. The crystal chandelier above cast dancing shadows on the expensive paper while my vision kept blurring. For a moment, I thought I was having another one of those dizzy spells that had been hitting me for months. Then I saw her. My name is Benjamin Carter. I'm 60 years old, and I've built Carter Construction from nothing into a $30 million company over the last 30 years. Started with a beat-up pickup truck and a toolbox when I was 30, fresh out of the Army. Now we employ 180 people and build everything from shopping centers to apartment complexes across 3 states. But none of that mattered when I spotted my pregnant daughter-in-law serving tables in this upscale restaurant, looking like she hadn't eaten a proper meal in weeks. Kate Wilson Carter was supposed to be at home in the suburban house I'd helped them buy, 7 months pregnant with my first grandchild. Instead, she was struggling to carry a heavy tray between tables packed with Philadelphia's business elite, her wedding ring still catching the light, but her face hollow with exhaustion. Her black uniform hung loose everywhere except around her belly, and I could see dark circles under her eyes from across the dining room. My son Ollie had told me she was taking some time to think after their marriage hit a rough patch. Said she went to stay with her sister in Ohio for a few weeks to get her head straight. He never mentioned she was back in Philadelphia working double shifts as a waitress to survive. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here I was in the same restaurant where I'd closed some of the biggest deals of my career, watching my pregnant daughter-in-law serve overpriced steaks to men who made less in a year than what I paid in quarterly taxes. The smell of seared beef and expensive wine that usually signaled success now made my stomach turn. I watched her approach our booth, her eyes downcast, moving carefully to avoid bumping into chairs with her belly. When she finally looked up to take our drink order and recognized me, the color drained from her face faster than water down a drain. "Good evening, gentlemen," she whispered, her voice trembling like a leaf in a storm. "Can I start you with drinks tonight?" "Kate," I said quietly, trying to keep my voice level. "What are you doing here? I'm just the server, mister." "Carter," she stammered, gripping her order pad so tight her knuckles went white. "I'll get your drink order right away." Gerald Thompson, my business partner sitting across from me, looked confused. He'd met Kate at company barbecues, knew she was married to my son, but I wasn't about to explain this situation in front of him. "2 whiskeys, neat," I told her, never taking my eyes off her face. "And Kate, we need to talk after your shift." She nodded quickly and hurried away, nearly stumbling in her rush to reach the kitchen. I watched her disappear through the swinging doors, my appetite completely gone despite the $50 steaks we'd ordered. But I wasn't letting this slide. I'd raised Ollie better than this, or at least I thought I had. Gerald kept talking about profit margins and quarterly projections, but I barely heard him. I kept watching Kate struggle between tables, saw how she had to stop and lean against walls when she thought nobody was looking. 7 months pregnant and working a job that kept her on her feet for 8-hour shifts. It was criminal. After the dinner meeting ended, I barely remember signing that contract. My mind was elsewhere. I followed Kate to the employee parking lot behind the restaurant. The Philadelphia winter air bit through my wool coat as I found her sitting in a beat-up Honda Civic that should have been in a junkyard years ago, crying. The contrast hit me like a physical blow. My son drove a BMW I'd helped him finance. Kate was crying in a car with duct tape holding the rear window together. I tapped on her window and she nearly jumped out of her skin. When she saw it was me, she rolled down the window with a hand crank that probably hadn't worked smoothly since the Clinton administration. "Kate, get in my car. We need to talk." "I can't, Mr. Carter. If Ollie finds out what? That his pregnant wife is working double shifts because he kicked her out of their home." The words hung in the cold air between us like a challenge. Kate's breath formed small clouds as she looked around the empty parking lot, checking for anyone who might report back to my son. "Please," I said, softening my voice. "Just let me drive you somewhere warm." "You're shivering." She hesitated for a long moment, then grabbed a worn purse from her passenger seat and climbed out of the Honda. The car door squeaked like it was in pain when she closed it. My Mercedes felt like a luxury yacht compared to what she'd been driving. As we pulled out of the parking lot, the heated seats and smooth engine seemed almost offensive given what I'd just witnessed. "Where are you staying?" I asked. Kate's silence told me everything I needed to know. "Kate, please, I'm not going to judge you. I just want to understand what happened." That's when the whole story came pouring out like water through a broken dam. 3 weeks ago, Ollie had told Kate she needed to figure herself out and that their marriage was suffocating him. Said he needed space to focus on growing the business without distractions. He'd changed the locks while she was visiting her sister in Ohio. When she came back, her clothes were in garbage bags on the front porch. He said I was too needy. Kate said through her tears, her voice barely above a whisper, that I was holding him back from his full potential, that maybe we'd rushed into marriage and having a baby, growing the business. That was rich. I'd been trying to get Ollie more involved in Carter construction for years, but he always had excuses. Too busy with his MBA courses from Temple, then too busy with his strategic planning initiatives, then too busy with that financial consultant he'd hired without running it by me first. Speaking of which, where was all this strategic planning money going? We'd been bleeding cash for months, and every time I asked Ollie about the consulting fees, he'd give me some rehearsed speech about investing in digital transformation and modernizing our operational approach. I drove Kate to the Hampton Inn near the airport and paid for a week up front. The desk clerk looked at us strangely, a 60-year-old man checking in a young pregnant woman at 10 p.m., but I didn't care what he thought. "You're not sleeping in that car," I told her as I handed her the room key. "And you're not working on your feet at 7 months pregnant. Take tomorrow off. We'll figure this out," but something wasn't adding up in my head as I drove home that night. Ollie made $85,000 a year as VP of Operations, plus bonuses. Even if they were having problems, he wouldn't let his pregnant wife become homeless unless something else was going on. The next morning, I did something I'd never done in 30 years of business. I went through the company books without telling Ollie first. What I found in our downtown office made my blood run colder than a Philadelphia winter. Carter Construction's main office occupied the 3rd floor of a converted warehouse in Northern Liberties. I'd chosen the location because it was close to our job sites and the rent was reasonable. My corner office had windows overlooking the Delaware River, and on clear days, I could see the cranes working on the new developments we were building. But that morning, instead of admiring the view, I was hunched over financial statements that made no sense. $380,000 was missing from our operating accounts. Not stolen in one big chunk that would trigger bank alerts, but siphoned off over 4 months through consulting contracts that looked legitimate on the surface. The financial consultant Ollie had been raving about Amanda Clark with her MBA from Wharton, and her promises to revolutionize our business model had been billing us for projects that existed only on paper. Strategic market analysis for Northeast expansion, operational efficiency audit and implementation, digital transformation roadmap and execution. All fancy words that justified $15,000 to $25,000 monthly payments. I pulled up Amanda's business registration. Clark Consulting Solutions LLC, established 6 months ago with an address in Center City. But when I called the building's management company, they told me no such business had ever leased space there. The address was a mailbox's Etse. My hands were shaking as I cross-referenced Amanda's personal address with Ollie's credit card statements. He'd been using the company card for business dinners 3 nights a week at the same luxury apartment complex in Rittenhouse Square where Amanda supposedly lived. My son wasn't just embezzling from the company I'd built with calloused hands and 12-hour days. He was cheating on his pregnant wife while doing it. The betrayal cut deeper than any injury I'd suffered on job sites. I'd given Ollie everything, a college education I never had, a leadership position in the company, my trust, and he'd thrown it all away for stolen money and a woman who was playing him like a violin. I needed proof before I confronted him, real evidence that would hold up in court if necessary. So I did what any smart businessman would do. I hired a professional investigator. Nicholas Foster ran a small agency specializing in corporate fraud. His office was in a converted row house in Fishtown. Nothing fancy, but his reputation was solid. Nick had handled embezzlement cases for 20 years, worked with the FBI on white-collar crime, and he didn't ask stupid questions. "Give me 4 weeks, Nick said after I laid out the situation. If they're as sloppy as most inside thieves, I'll have enough evidence to put them both away." While Nick worked his magic with surveillance cameras and financial forensics, I started paying closer attention to my own symptoms. Those dizzy spells I'd been having for months, they always happened right after Ollie brought me coffee during our weekly father-son meetings. Always the same blue ceramic mug with a small chip on the handle, a mug he'd given me for Father's Day 2 years ago. The pattern was too consistent to ignore. Monday morning meetings, coffee from my favorite mug, and within 20 minutes I'd feel dizzy and confused. Sometimes I'd have to lie down in my office for an hour before I could drive home safely. I started an experiment. Instead of drinking the coffee, I'd dump it in my office plant when Ollie wasn't looking and replace it with water from the cooler. Within 3 days, my head was clearer than it had been in months. The afternoon fatigue disappeared. The memory lapses stopped. That's when the horrible realization hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. My own son had been drugging me. During our next Monday meeting, I watched Ollie carefully as he handed me the chipped mug. His smile was the same one he'd worn as a kid when he was hiding something. The coffee smelled normal, looked normal, but I'd already decided to test it. I need to take a call, I told him, stepping into the hallway with the mug. In the bathroom, I poured the coffee into a sample container I'd bought at CVS. If there were sleeping pills or other drugs in there, a lab test would find them. The results came back 2 days later. Zolpidem generic Ambien, enough in 1 cup to make a grown man drowsy and confused for hours. No wonder I'd been making bad decisions in afternoon meetings. No wonder the board had started questioning my judgment. They weren't just stealing my money. They were stealing my mind. 1 drugged cup of coffee at a time. Nick Foster's surveillance confirmed my worst fears, and then some. Over the next 4 weeks, his team documented everything with the precision of a Swiss watch. Ollie and Amanda weren't just living together in that Rittenhouse Square apartment. She was the mastermind behind the whole operation. Nick's first breakthrough came from a parabolic microphone aimed at their 3rd-floor balcony. Modern glass buildings might look impressive, but they're terrible for privacy when a professional is listening. He recorded Amanda explaining to Ollie how the sleeping pills in my coffee were part of a larger strategy. "The old man's losing it," she said on a recording that made my blood boil. "A few more months of this, and the board will push him into early retirement. Then you'll have full control of Carter Construction. We just need to be patient," but patience wasn't Amanda's strong suit. Nick's financial forensics revealed she'd been embezzling from 2 other small companies before targeting us. She had a pattern: seduce a weak-willed executive, manipulate him into giving her access to company finances, then bleed the business dry through fake consulting contracts. The most damaging evidence came from Amanda's laptop, which she carelessly left open during one of their balcony conversations. Nick's telephoto lens captured screenshots of spreadsheets showing exactly where our $380,000 had gone. Offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, luxury purchases, and payments to something called transition planning services, which turned out to be Amanda's next business venture. She was already planning to abandon Ollie once she'd squeezed everything she could from Carter Construction. The fool thought they were building a life together. She was just using him as a key to unlock my safe. But the recording that nearly made me put my fist through the wall was Amanda coaching Ollie on how to handle me during our weekly meetings. "Remember, he's old and confused now," she said, her voice dripping with fake concern. "When he asks about the consulting fees, just use the script we practiced. Talk about digital transformation, operational synergies, all that MBA bullshit. He built the company with hammers and nails. He doesn't understand modern business." Hammers and nails. Like the foundation of everything he'd inherited was somehow primitive. I'd built Carter Construction by working 70-hour weeks, treating employees fairly, and delivering quality work on time and under budget. That old-fashioned approach had created 180 jobs and generated $30 million in annual revenue. Meanwhile, Kate was sleeping in a hotel room I was paying for, working restaurant shifts that could trigger premature labor, all because my son had chosen his criminal girlfriend over his pregnant wife. The breaking point came when Nick showed me surveillance footage of Ollie and Amanda celebrating at an expensive steakhouse. The same night, Kate had worked a double shift at Belmont's. They were toasting with champagne that cost more than Kate made in a week, laughing about something on Amanda's phone. I realized I'd been fighting this all wrong. Instead of confronting them directly, I needed to let them think they were winning, give them enough rope to hang themselves, as my father used to say. That's when I came up with a trap. I called Ollie into my office on a Tuesday morning, making sure to act confused and tired. I even brought my own coffee in the chipped mug, having filled it with regular coffee and a tiny bit of Benadryl to make myself look genuinely drowsy. "Son, I've been thinking," I said, rubbing my temples like I had a headache. "Maybe you're right about me stepping back. This whole business is getting too complicated for an old construction worker like me." Ollie's eyes lit up like slot machine jackpots. "Dad, I think that's really smart. You've earned the right to enjoy your retirement. Amanda has some ideas for a comprehensive transition plan that could make this really smooth." "How much are we talking about for something like that?" "Well, it's a big project. Full leadership transition, operational restructuring, digital integration. Maybe $500,000 for the complete package. $500,000 for a transition package that would probably end with my signature on retirement papers and their names on all the bank accounts." The audacity was breathtaking. "Set up a meeting," I said, pretending to struggle with the math. "But I want to see exactly where all this money is going. I've been getting questions from the accountant about these consulting fees." That was the bait. I knew Amanda would have to show me detailed invoices and project documentation to justify another $500,000 on top of what she'd already stolen. With Nick recording everything and federal agents positioned in the building next door, all I had to do was get them to confess on tape. The meeting was scheduled for Friday afternoon in our main conference room. I spent the week preparing like I was going into battle, because that's exactly what this was. A battle for my company, my family, and my grandson's future. I also spent time with Kate, driving her to prenatal appointments and making sure she was eating properly. Her doctor was concerned about her stress levels and blood pressure. The constant worry about money and housing wasn't good for the baby, Mr. Carter, she said one evening as we sat in the hotel restaurant. I don't want you to think badly of Ollie. He's not evil, he's just lost. I know, sweetheart. But being lost doesn't excuse what he's done to you and that baby. Friday couldn't come fast enough. I was ready to end this nightmare once and for all. Friday afternoon arrived with the kind of gray Philadelphia sky that matched my mood perfectly. The Carter construction conference room had been transformed into a stage for the final act of this betrayal. Nick Foster had positioned wireless microphones throughout the room, and FBI agents were stationed in the law office next door with a clear view through our windows. Amanda walked in at exactly 2 p.m. wearing a $3,000 Armani suit that my company's stolen money had probably paid for. She carried an expensive leather briefcase and moved with the confidence of someone who thought she was about to close the deal of a lifetime. Ollie followed behind her like a trained dog, wearing his best smile and a tie I'd given him for Christmas. Mr. Carter, Amanda said with that practiced smile I'd learned to despise, I'm so excited to show you how we can position Carter Construction for the next generation of success. The next 45 minutes were a masterclass in corporate bullshit. Amanda spread out charts and graphs that looked impressive but meant absolutely nothing. She talked about operational synergies, digital transformation matrices, and scalable growth paradigms. Every buzzword was designed to make an old construction worker feel stupid and out of touch. Ollie sat there nodding along like he understood every word, completely convinced he was part of some brilliant business strategy instead of watching his girlfriend commit felony fraud in real time. This comprehensive transition package, Amanda continued, pointing to a flowchart that could have been drawn by a 5-year-old, will position Oliver to take Carter Construction from a regional player to a national powerhouse. We're talking about 300% growth potential within 18 months. 300% growth. That would put us at $120 million in annual revenue, which would require us to triple our workforce and equipment overnight. Only an idiot would believe that was possible, but Amanda was counting on me being too drugged and confused to do the math. This all looks very impressive, I said, playing the part of the doddering old fool, but I have to ask, where did that first $380,000 actually go? My accountant is asking questions. For the first time, Amanda's smile flickered. Just for a second, but I caught it. I'm not sure what you mean, Mr. Carter. All the consulting work has been properly documented. I mean, these projects you've been billing us for, the market analysis that doesn't exist, the efficiency audit that was never conducted, the digital transformation that never happened. Now Ollie was looking confused, his head swiveling between Amanda and me like he was watching a tennis match. Dad, what are you talking about? Amanda's been working on all of that. Have you actually seen any of this work, son? Any reports, any data, any actual results? Well, no, but Amanda said the preliminary research phase was confidential until what? Until you helped her steal another $500,000? The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. Amanda's hand moved toward her purse, probably reaching for her phone to call someone, but she was too late. Amanda said a lot of things, son, like how sleeping pills in my coffee would make me seem incompetent during board meetings, like how easy it would be to push the old man into retirement once his mind started going. Ollie's face went white as a sheet. Dad, I didn't know about any coffee, FBI, nobody move, hands where we can see them. 3 federal agents burst through the conference room door with weapons drawn. Nick Foster followed behind them carrying recording equipment and a briefcase full of evidence that would put Amanda away for a very long time. Amanda tried to make a run for it, but there was nowhere to go. The building was surrounded. She was handcuffed and read her rights while screaming about harassment and illegal surveillance. Ollie just sat there in his chair, staring at me with a mixture of shock and dawning realization. Dad, he whispered, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know about the drugs or the fake invoices. I thought Amanda was really helping us grow. Son, you have the right to remain silent. I suggest you use it until your lawyer gets here. The next few hours were a blur of federal agents, forensic accountants, and lawyers in expensive suits. Amanda's laptop contained a digital roadmap of her entire scheme, including detailed plans to force me into retirement and transfer company ownership to Ollie, who would then be easily manipulated into signing over control to her. The offshore accounts, the fake consulting contracts, even a forged retirement agreement with my signature, it was all there in black and white. Amanda had been planning this con for over a year, researching my family and business before she ever approached Ollie at that NBA networking event where they met, but the smoking gun was a recorded phone conversation between Amanda and her previous victim, A restaurant owner in Atlantic City, she'd embezzled $200,000 from using the exact same method. She'd been bragging about how easy it was to manipulate weak men with daddy issues and more money than brains. The trial took 8 months. During that time, Kate moved back into the house. Ollie was staying with his aunt while his case was pending, and we focused on getting ready for the baby. I was there when Timothy Carter was born at Jefferson Hospital on a snowy February morning. Holding my first grandchild made everything else seem small and manageable. Ollie eventually pleaded guilty to conspiracy and fraud charges. Because he was a first-time offender who'd clearly been manipulated, he got 2 years probation and had to pay back every penny with interest. Amanda wasn't so lucky. With her history of financial crimes across multiple states, she received 6 years in federal prison and full asset forfeiture. All $380,000 was recovered and returned to Carter Construction. The FBI's Financial Crimes Unit used our case as a training example of how corporate fraud typically unfolds in family businesses. But the real victory wasn't the money or seeing Amanda in handcuffs. It was what happened after the legal dust settled. I offered Kate the position of Chief Financial Officer. She had her accounting degree, a sharp eye for numbers, and intimate knowledge of how financial fraud works. Who better to make sure this never happened again? Ollie had to start over from the bottom, working construction sites in work boots and hard hats, learning the business the way I had 30 years earlier. No more corner office, no more company car, no more VP title. If he wanted to inherit Carter Construction someday, he'd have to earn it with sweat and competence instead of entitlement and smooth talk. The family counseling was awkward at first. 3 generations sitting in a therapist's office, talking about trust, responsibility, and what it really means to be a man. But slowly, carefully, things began to heal. Today, 2 years later, Kate runs our finances with military precision, and not a dollar moves without her written approval. Ollie's working as a site supervisor, putting in 50-hour weeks and learning to read blueprints instead of balance sheets. Little Timothy calls me Papa and claps his hands when I walk through the door after work. Amanda Clark is still in federal prison, and I hope she stays there for every day of her sentence. Some people can't be rehabilitated, they can only be stopped. But my son, he's learning slowly, painfully, but he's learning that respect is earned through honest work, not stolen through clever schemes. And maybe that's the most important construction project I've ever supervised, rebuilding a family that almost got demolished by greed and betrayal. The company's stronger than ever, our reputation is intact, and my grandson will inherit something worth having. Not just money or buildings, but a family business built on integrity and the understanding that real success comes from building something that lasts, not tearing down what others have built. Sometimes the best revenge is simply making sure the right people win in the end, and watching your family learn the difference between earning something and stealing it. That's worth more than all the contracts in Philadelphia. I learned that building a legacy isn't about the money you leave behind, it's about teaching the next generation that character matters more than shortcuts, and that real wealth comes from knowing you can trust the people who carry your name. The hardest lesson for any father is realizing that protecting your family sometimes means protecting them from each other, and that true love requires the courage to let consequences teach what words couldn't.